Did you know that Planters Peanuts, Hormel Foods, Duncan Hines, and Kentucky Fried Chicken are all connected? And did you know that also connected is Lee's Famous Recipe Chicken, Captain D's, Shoney's, Miss Winter's Chicken? Maybe you heard of Miss Millie's Awesome Chicken over in the UK? They're all connected. You might have heard of Mary & Kay Spices. They're connected as well, and Grace's Perfect Blend. Duncan Hines was a food reviewer, very famous one back in his day. Now they have a company named after him. Dolly Parton is a spokeswoman for them. Duncan Hines was responsible for reviewing the Sanders Court and Cafe in Corbin, Kentucky in the 1930s, which led to Governor Ruby LaFoon commissioning Harlan Sanders as a Kentucky colonel for his contribution to the state's cuisine, also inspiring him to continue to try to franchise his chicken recipe and create Kentucky Fried Chicken. At the time, it was only 10 herbs and spices. His nephew Lee started Lee's Famous Recipe Chicken in 1966 after the colonel sold out in 1964 to Brown and Massey, retaining ownership of the Canadian franchises until 1972. Hormel Foods owns Planters Peanuts. Now, Hormel Foods purchased Chicken by George. Chicken by George was Governor John Y. Brown Jr.'s wife's chicken chain that she had created. Cousin Lee always swore that they were using the original recipe to Uncle Harley's chicken. And how is that possible when I say that nobody can use the recipe today? Well, Governor John Y. Brown Jr. was one of the first purchasers that bought the Kentucky Fried Chicken recipe from my uncle. And when he sold it to Hulbline in 1971, there's no saying what Brown did with it. If somebody said Brown gave them the recipe, I can't say it's true or not true. I could just go by the facts that they're not supposed to say it. And I know the facts that my family did not hand it out. Well, Hormel Foods purchased Chicken by George, and it was discontinued years later. There's that connection. How does Lee's Famous Recipe have a connection to Shoney's or Captain D's? Lee was friends with Ray Danner, one of the founders of Shoney's. He was also a franchisee of Kentucky Fried Chicken. He got into a racial bias lawsuit. Many of you might know him from that in the 1980s or 90s. But Ray Danner is who purchased Lee's Famous Recipe Chicken from my cousin Lee. Ray Danner was also involved with Captain D's. Lee was involved with Captain D's, and I believe parts of Lee's family, his direct family, children and grandchildren were involved with Captain D's as well. Could be wrong on that, but I know that Lee was involved with it or connected to it through Ray. So there's all that connection. Mary & Kay Spices started making seasonings for Colonel Sanders, Uncle Harley, in the mid to late 1960s. They were mixing the spices for the Claudia Sanders Dinner House, formerly known as the Colonel's Lady, until the parent company of Kentucky Fried Chicken, Hulbline, filed a lawsuit against Colonel Sanders for using his name and image on the restaurant. He was accused of using his original recipe, but it wasn't his original recipe. After he sold out and signed the contracts, he adhered to those rules of his recipe so that he couldn't put himself in any jeopardy. Nowhere in the contract did it say he could not give the spice blend mix to somebody and have them try to recreate it. Well, he believed Bill Summers was the best at doing so. So he gave the mix to him and challenged him to recreate it. And when they came up with 99X, Uncle Harley deemed that good enough, and they used it in the Claudia Sanders Dinner House. After that lawsuit, it ticked Uncle Harley off enough that he did go around to 200 franchisees of Kentucky Fried Chicken and told them to use 99X. It was better than whatever corporate was having them use today. He died in 1980, and after his death, that sparked a lawsuit with Mary & Kay Spices and Kentucky Fried Chicken, which was later dropped because they had no grounds to sue, I'm told, by Bill Summers' grandson. Mary & Kay Spices reserved the right to sell to anybody. It was the franchisees of Kentucky Fried Chicken that agreed to use 99X that were in violation. Also in this, Cousin Lee, his wife, Jean, ran a Kentucky Fried Chicken in Tennessee that Uncle Harley had given her. They used the 99X spices in there. Until Lee decided to help manage it, Lee started using his spices in there. How did they get away with this? Well, no one can get in trouble for this now because I'm telling you it after they're all dead. And that location I don't even believe exists today. Lee would move out all of the Kentucky Fried Chicken spices and put the Lee's Famous Recipe spices in that restaurant. When corporate came to do their inspections, Lee would have all of his spices removed and the corporate spices in. They did this also when they were using 99X. They would move 99X out for inspection, move it back in when they left. And that restaurant was one of the highest rated Kentucky Fried Chickens in Tennessee during its time. Grace's Perfect Blend has a connection because Pat Grace knew my uncle. He was friends with him. He worked with him in Canada and then took some franchises and spice mixes with him to Ireland. He didn't like the changes that were going on, so they created Grace's Perfect Blend, and his son Carl Grace could tell you more about that. Now, I don't believe that any of these recipes used today are the original recipe, but they could be very close to it. There were so many people in the family trying to crack what Uncle Harley's recipe was just for fun, and a lot of people outside of the family trying to crack it just as there are today. It does not surprise me if somebody came really close to it to create a really good spice blend to sell. Uncle Harley's recipe can't be too hard to crack because he even said himself 10 to the 11 are very common ingredients that everybody has. And today everybody might have all 11. On my YouTube channel, I followed all the history for the last 3 years. We looked at all the public listings of the similar recipes such as 99X. And we just used common sense and family knowledge. Even though the family don't know what it is, family has bits and pieces of information of what it was because they were there. Plus, there's still some family left that knew what it tasted like. So with all that stuff, we put 11 herbs and spices together just to disprove my step-cousin Joe Ledington's lies on his recipe. And that can be found on my YouTube channel. It's pinned. The cooking video's on there. And then I put a 30-minute video just last week on why I think all of those 11 are it. And it may not be it, but it's pretty darn close. And I think it's one of the best templates that you could go buy on the internet today. Forget the forums. Forget the leaked recipes. That's going to be the best bet that you have to go by. And if you didn't know, I'm Colonel Sanders' great-great-great-nephew. The last Sanders on the family line. There's other Sanders in the family, don't get me wrong. I'm just the youngest one in the line to carry the last name. I come from his brother Clarence. Clarence was the Colonel's brother, my great-great-grandfather. Clarence had 2 sons, and only one of his sons had kids to carry on down to me. That's how I exist. There are a lot of family out there, but they don't go public like I do. They don't care to. And that's fine. I appreciate that they appreciate their privacy. Only a few times in the last few years has any of the family gone public. Joe Ledington, not really related to us, leaked a fake recipe and then spread a bunch of lies around that, and the Chicago Tribune helped do that. Papa John's lied about my uncle saying some pretty racist things, which he never said, and then the Colonel's grandchildren had to come out and say something about it. I, on the internet, who started as a gaming channel, got tired of seeing all the rumors and lies spread around and hate spread around about my family when I knew this stuff wasn't true. So I decided to do something about it, especially after I was commissioned a Kentucky Colonel. Those Kentucky Fried Chicken ads from 8 years ago also inspired me to get out here and start talking about who the real Colonel was. You see that photo? You're not going to get that on the internet other than from my page. I have photos that you've never seen before. Now, YouTube, I've been on there for 10 years, putting a lot of information out, a lot of entertainment out. Instagram, I've only been on there for a few years, and we got 61,000 followers. YouTube's not doing as good as Instagram. Here, we started doing content about 3 years ago, and, 300,000 followers, but TikTok doesn't show you these videos anymore. This is my last attempt to reach out to 300,000 of my followers before this app gets banned, if it gets banned, to let you know that I'm on YouTube every day, keeping the legacy alive. Follow me on there.